Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I'm joined here, as always, by the man who is telling every NFL team he knows that Shedeur Sanders is worth a top 3 pick. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I would love a trade up in that spot, someone to take them. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, we'll find out tomorrow. But doing pretty good. A little nervous for my Patriots there. We'll see how it goes.
Yes, we will see how it goes. Kyle, this is usually our best, our show that does the best in the off season. So just to throw everybody off and try to, mess things up a little, we decided to do it an hour early this time. Just trying to make sure we can, we don't want things to get do too well here.
Yeah. Got to keep everyone on their toes. And, obviously not the best time for scheduling conflicts, but we'll do what we can. And, we're ready to get rolling.
Yes, Kyle, this is our sixth time now we have done a mock draft. We started in 2020, so it's been 5 years now of doing this.
Yeah, I mean we've this show has some years behind it now. We have some dedicated fans. We have some still new fans rolling in, and look at where we are now. Now we can't get a single pick wrong now. That's what that means.
Yeah, we nail it every year. Kyle, what we do here on this show is there's a lot of predictive mock drafts. That is not what we do. We do a mock draft where we are going to pick what we would do if we were in the GM chair. We're going to go back and forth. I am going to do the odds. You are going to do the evens. So that way we'll each pick our favorite teams. Shall we just jump in?
Let's dive right in. So, like you said, you are doing the odd team, so you are starting this draft, and as of right now, you are on the clock with the Tennessee Titans.
Okay, yes. I have for anyone who's listening audio only wise, we have the video up on the YouTube feed. If there's any issues with the video feed, let me know in the chat and we'll try to fix those. Sometimes things get wonky, but ultimately, again, it's what I would do. Everyone knows Cam Ward is going to go first overall, and I agree with everyone. I think that Cam Ward should go first overall. I think he's very good.
Yeah, he is very, very good. Could you make a debate on... he's not the best. He wouldn't have been the number 1 pick last year. He may not have been a top 3 quarterback last year. I still think he's a very, very good quarterback prospect. He may not be the number 1 consensus prospect in this draft, but we all know that quarterback plays the premium position. And when you don't have a quarterback, you have the number 1 pick. I think you have to take advantage of that opportunity. And I think that even beyond all that, I think he's a top 10 prospect in this draft. I think he has a ton of talent, the ability to buy time, make plays, the mobility, the arm, all of it comes together into a very nice package. I think he has a lot going for him. And, this is a new era for the Tennessee Titans. So we'll see it.
Yeah. And we've been forever on, and I think we all kind of know our Cam Ward to Titans takes. Kyle, why don't you go with number 2? This is definitely something where, okay, we know that the Browns will have a decision to make. You have a decision to make here. Are you going to go Shedeur, help set yourself up for pick 4?
Do this all to help myself at the Patriots spot. No, I have to be honest to all 32 teams, or all the teams at least that I pick. And to me, this is a no-brainer. It could be a debate for other people. For me, it's not a debate. This has to be Travis Hunter. I think he is the best prospect in this draft. I think him going to number 2 obviously is something that's good for Cleveland. And look, they could use help at receiver. They could use help at defensive back. And they have this all packaged into one. He's a very, very unique player. And I think he's going to be a slam dunk in the NFL. Can he play both positions in the NFL? I don't know. I don't see why not for right now. But at the same time, I still think you're getting a pretty good player at 2 positions, and maybe he plays 1 in the NFL. And that's still something that I think is going to work out.
Yeah, it just feels like I think the built-in fail-safe of if he doesn't work out at whatever position you want to draft him at, he can, potentially work out at a different position. Just feels like it makes him so much more valuable, right? Because you never know with prospects. Great prospects fail all the time. At least now you're essentially like doubling. You're getting twice the odds of getting a great player, basically.
Yeah, especially in a draft with so much unknown too. I mean, it's been talked about a lot. This is not the best draft we've seen. I think there's 2 guys that I feel like, you know what? Are they the perfect prospects? No, but at the same time, there are 2 guys in this draft that I feel comfortable at, that I feel very strongly about are going to be good players no matter what. Obviously, like you said, nothing in life is guaranteed, especially in the NFL draft. But there's two guys that I feel very, very good about that are going to be good in the NFL. And Travis Hunter is one of those guys. I think he could be an all-pro.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the other guy, Kyle. Pick number 3, the New York Giants, who I think there is a world where there is a trade here in this situation. I figure we probably won't do trades unless, I mean, we'll leave the door open in case something happens. But I just think that, listen, I like Kayvon Thibodeau's a fine player. He's still, under relatively cheap control. He was a high draft pick, so it's not that cheap, but relatively cheap control for a couple years. But just he hasn't been good enough to get you to not take Abdul Carter when he is the next best prospect available, and there isn't another great one here. I think just I'm going to draft Abdul Carter and figure it out if I'm the Giants. So again, what I would do, that's what I would do.
I think that's 100% fair, and probably what I would do too. He feels really, really like a really strong player. There's obviously some injury concerns, but they seem pretty minor overall. And I mean, the explosiveness, the speed, the strength, all this off the edge. I mean, he looks like a complete package as an edge rusher, and you have to be excited about for the Giants. It's okay to load up on strengths when a prospect is this good. And I wouldn't really worry about need when you're that bad. Focus on getting good talent in the building. And he is without a doubt one of the better talents in this draft. So I think getting a guy like Carter makes a lot of sense here. I do think a trade is on the table as well, especially if someone blows him away with a trade package. But at the very least, you're getting a good player here if you just hold on and make this pick.
Yeah, there are bigger needs, but also, I mean, maybe you trade Kayvon Thibodeau after this. There's ways to do things.
Yeah. There's multiple ways, honestly. And honestly, I don't even think it's a bad thing to say, hey, if Thibodeau makes the leap, plus you have Abdul Carter, plus you have Dexter Lawrence in the middle, sometimes that's a good thing to just build a strength and say, we are going to dominate the defensive line. That's not a bad thing either. It would help your defensive backs even too, if you did that. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all.
Yeah, if Thibodeau ends up taking the leap and is now also an elite player, having 3 great edge rushers, that's not a terrible world to be in.
No. Teams would be terrified to play you. At the very least, you're annoying to play against.
Yeah, as opposed to being annoying to watch.
Yeah, which is what the Giants are right now.
Yes. Kyle, here we go. I think the mock draft really starts here. Your New England Patriots. Many people are speculating, will Campbell be the pick here? But this is not what you think is going to happen. This is what you would do. Patriots say, we're going to have a fan decide number 4th overall pick. What would you do?
They're calling me in as conciliary. Yeah, so if this is how it goes, I love the idea of a trade if a trade's on the table. Whether someone wants to trade up for Shedeur Sanders, whether someone wants to trade up for Ashton Jeanty, I think both of those are on the table at this point. I would love the idea of a trade back if this is how it went and they missed out on Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter for sure. However, we're not doing trades in this one, which is fine. I wasn't expecting to do trades. With there not being trades on the table, I have to look at the whole package here. I have Armand Membu over Will Campbell as far as a prospect goes. I think if I went offensive tackle, that's what I would prefer. Although I think Will Campbell could be a very good guard in the NFL or tackle. So there is that positional versatility, and I think he has a ton of upside still, despite some, up and down tape play as far as his game goes. And then the other one I would consider, honestly, is Jeanty at 4. Just taking him. Because, look, is it conventional for a team like the Patriots to take a running back with the 4th pick? No. But this team just needs good players. And they haven't had good players or players that are honestly, frankly, fun to watch in a long, long time. It feels like now, at least 5 years. And he would instantly become the most interesting player to watch on the team. And I think that's something that I would have to take a look at and seriously consider. But I want to build this franchise from the line of scrimmage. I want to set the trenches. So I'm going to take Membu with the 4th pick.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't hate it at all. I think that, I'm also not as high on Will Campbell. So I agree with not going that route. I mean, ultimately, again, you look at the Patriots, their needs on PFF here. It's running back, wide receiver, offensive line. Kyle, that's basically the entire offense.
Yeah, they need a lot of offensive help. So,
yeah.
Honestly, like, because it seems like Campbell is going to be the guy if this happens, if they keep the pick. And I'm not against Will Campbell. Like, I would be okay with the pick if it happened. And honestly, I kind of just have to accept it at this point based on the reporting. I would be okay with Will Campbell at this spot. I'd be okay with Membu at this spot. I would even be okay with GT at this spot. But I do think this is an opportunity to trade back here and try and catch a team desperate and maybe add some more assets down the line as well, or just later in this draft. So I do think they have a few options here to look at. But if they just stayed at this one, this would be my preferred pick, although I'd be okay with any of those three.
But I don't know. Is their team really going to trade up to 4? I think it would probably be for GT, right? That would probably be the Bears going up to 4.
That's my guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is talk of, I guess, Chicago potentially dangling even their second round pick to move up to 4. That I think that would be an interesting one. I mean, even the Raiders seem to be batting their eyelashes at GT too. If they're worried about someone coming up and jumping them for him, maybe they decide to move up to 4 or something like that. I think there's a few options on the table there.
Yeah. Number 5. So there's been this push for, is Ashton Jeanty going to go to the Jaguars now? Whereas that was kind of speculated early on. Didn't seem like it's going to go that way. Now it seems almost like 50-50 that it'll either Mason Graham or Jeanty. Again, it's what I would do. I think I would just go Mason Graham here. I think he is the best player available. He fills a need. I get it. There's other good players on the board that I do like, but I just think Graham is the other than tackle, he's the only real guy I'd be willing to go a 5 here. And the Jaguars have young tackles they want to develop, so I think going Mason Graham makes sense.
Absolutely, I agree with it as well. I had this in my, I did a little practice mock draft earlier, so I had him as well in this spot. There seems to be like this pushback on Mason Graham, like he's too short and stout. Which, like, I mean, I guess he's a little smaller, but at the same time, like, did we just not watch him push offensive linemen in the Big Ten around for 3 years or whatever it is? Like, this guy's a workhorse. I mean, I really like him. I think he's, I think we obsess over traits sometimes when sometimes you just need a good football player first. And I think Mason Graham's a very good football player. And I think that's going to go a long way to the Jaguars, where yes, this isn't their conventional thing. Like you said, this is a team that historically is loaded up on athletes. They've changed their GM. This is a new strategy. And you know what? I just want to get a good football player in the building who's going to, set the tone.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, what would Balky do in this? He goes Ashton Jeanty, right?
Would he? I mean, I don't know. He could go with like Shamar Stewart.
Oh yeah, that would be the move. Yeah, what am I thinking? Yeah, Shamar Stewart. That's he'd race that card in.
Actually, you know who he would do is what is his name? The Georgia linebacker.
Oh, Jalen Walker.
Jalen Walker. Yeah, Jalen Walker would definitely be the pick here.
Yeah. There's some good Trent Balky. He's got to be upset right now
that he's not making this pick. He's not looking at all the athletes crunching the tape.
Yeah, I think so. Kyle, number 6. This is an important one for this podcast. You got to make sure you do Raiders Nation's proud here, Kyle.
Raiders Nation. Look, there's been a lot of GT talk at this spot, and like, I don't hate it. I really don't. I think they have a few other things they could look at. I really like the idea of Walter Nolan on this team. I like Ted McMillan on this team as a potential play too. But like I said, I think there's a couple guys that I feel pretty confident are going to be very good in the NFL. And I think GT is one of those guys in this draft specifically. So is it unconventional to take a running back this high? Yes. But at the same time, I just don't think there's a lot of blue chip prospects. I think there's only a few guys that would have in that spot. And so I'm going to take a blue chip prospect and take GT here.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's still a little early for me, even with as much as I like GT as a prospect, just because of the positional value. But like, I don't hate the idea at all. You want to be good right now. That's kind of the Raiders' thought, is they're trying to run. They're trying to walk before they can run here. It's not the worst idea in the world to get a guy who should help you be better this year.
Yeah, and there's just There's just a few too many like questions for me for the rest of these guys in this draft. Will Campbell's not really a priority for them. They have a pretty decent offensive line, and obviously Colton Miller is a mainstay at that left tackle spot for them. Like I said, I thought for a long time about Walter Nolan in this spot, and that's probably would have been my next selection. But at the same time, I just think even a guy like McMillan, I have too many question marks in this spot. And that's why eventually I have to go with the guy that I feel like right away could step in and help my offense. I'm going into next season with Geno Smith, with Ashton Jeanty. I got a really nice quarterback running back combo, and I'm excited.
Yeah. No, makes sense. So for the Jets, most people are expecting them to go with Ahmad Membo. Of course, Kyle, you rained on that parade by selecting him earlier. For the Jets at pick 7, I think I'm still gonna go tackle here and get my number 1 tackle in this class, who is already at 22 for PFF. But I'm gonna go Kelvin Banks Jr., which is again. There's a bit of a weird thing where now you have essentially 2 left tackles, right? Or you have Alou Fashanu. You have to make sure that, or no, I'm trying to remember. Is Alou Fashanu a left tackle or right tackle? Because I know he played both last year. But either way, I'm drafting Kelvin Banks, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea to figure it out that way. You just still need some offensive line help. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember we talked about it when we regraded our first round from last year. But when Olu Fashanu did play left tackle last year, he was very, very good. He just didn't play it a lot because they had Tyron Smith and they moved him all around the offensive line. And he really struggled when he moved positions. But I'm still willing to say, left tackle, right tackle, we'll figure it out with these two. And look, the tape on Kelvin Banks, I think it's a little inconsistent, but at the same time, there are moments where he absolutely dominated some of the best players in the game. And you could see that dominant force with him. So I think it's a good pick, and I think he's a really high upside prospect for sure.
Someone helps us out in the chat by saying Fashanu was a natural left tackle, but played right tackle for 3 games when Morgan Moses went down. That's right. Yeah, I was trying to. That's what I thought, and then I doubted myself. But yes. So again, there is that risk factor there, but ultimately, again, Banks is the next best player on my board, so that's why I'm going with that. I'm assuming not everyone would do the same. Kyle, pick number 8 is another interesting one with the Panthers. A lot of ways they could go about this. A lot of people are speculating Jalen Walker here. What do you think they should do?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's Walker. I have him a little lower on my board. I took a look at Jody Barron here. Excuse me, not Brown. Jody Barron here, the defensive back. I think this team could use a lot of defensive help as it is. But that being said, I think my first priority above all else is to try and put Bryce Young in the best position to be successful next season and see what I have at the quarterback. The quarterback is the most important investment in this team. And you know what? If I stink on defense next year, I don't really care. Like, if Bryce Young's good next season, that's the biggest priority. I don't care if I win 5 games next year as long as Bryce Young plays well. So I want to get Ted McMillan here. I want to get him a number 1 receiver potential option. And so, yeah, I'm going to take the receiver and say I need to add talent to this offense. And, I still have a lot of holes on defense to figure out, but I need to see this out as much as I can before I worry about fixing the defense, because this team's still a long way away, but Bryce Young can make that go a lot faster.
Yeah, I think it's the correct move, and I think that this feels like it's Jalen Walker or Ted McMillan, and I just can't imagine Panthers fans are sitting here and saying, "Please give us the developmental." Guy who we don't even know whose position is going to be playing on defense. Like, I have to imagine Panthers fans are saying, please just give me the number 1 receiver, the guy who's getting compared to Drake London and Mike Evans.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, look, I do think best case scenario, I think he is a Mike Evans level player. I don't think the tape for Jalen Walker is as bad as some of the naysayers say. I think there is some good stuff there, but at the same time, he is developmental. He's still young. He still played multiple positions in college, and he's got to kind of figure out what he's going to do at that spot. So it is a risk. It's still a big risk at this spot. It's still a top 10 pick, even if you consider this not a strong draft. I see the vision for where Jalen Walker could be a really good player. But I just want a guy who I feel like I can throw the ball to a few times and see what happens.
Yeah. Michael with a super chat saying, I'll question what I'm doing with my life if it's Walker. And Michael, I didn't even make fun of the Panthers in this segment.
Yeah. Good thing you didn't do the pick. You probably would have given him Jalen Walker.
Yeah,
You don't even have him on your board, but it's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. Now I'm picking the Saints. I think I should give him like a punter here, right?
Yeah, that's probably the right move.
No. Okay. I will still, for the Saints fans watching or listening, I will still play this out. I was thinking about what the exact best move is. I do think they're in a bit of a weird spot. It's still too early for the quarterback stuff for me. I don't love either of these quarterbacks enough to really go there. One thought I'm having is, so I really like James Pierce Jr. For a lot of people, that's early. I don't know if it's that early for me. Jahad Campbell is also a player I really like. Now, he's, they don't necessarily need a linebacker right this moment, but also Demario Davis is 36. Do you want to let him kind of learn for a year and then play? I think I'm kind of in between those two picks. So I think I'm just going to go with, I mean, either way, you're kind of getting a guy who's going to maybe start on the bench, but then hopefully get some playing time. Someone says hands down the best move is Will Campbell, but I'm not that crazy about Will Campbell. It's what I would do. So I think I'm just going to go with, it's what we would do. I'll go with Jahad Campbell here. I think that's the move. Let him learn behind Demario Davis for a year. He'll get some playing time, and then maybe next year you let him be a starter.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I probably would have gone defensive line. I think this is a good spot for James Pierce, honestly. He's also my number 2 edge rusher in this class. It's something I wouldn't have hated at all. But I think conventional wisdom would say it's a risk. The consensus mock would say it's much more of a risk. So it would be an interesting back and forth if they debated that. But, I do think that they could still add some defensive help, even though there's not like a clear-cut offensive option for me here. But I think that was an option. I would have considered Will Campbell here in this spot if he fell this far as well, but I'm a little higher on him than you. And so, yeah, I think those are the interesting ones. And, I think that's a very justifiable pick still.
Yeah. Maybe I should have gone to Pierce. I don't know. I just feel like I can't reach that much. People will get mad at me.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, look, I get it. So that's fine.
But honestly, like if you're in between two picks and there's one pick that everyone's saying, oh yeah, that would be a smart pick, and then one pick that everyone's saying that would be a massive reach, you should just go with the one. Like the consensus does tend to be correct because obviously more people, more people that agree with something tend to be right.
Yeah. I mean, it's fair. No, I agree.
And it screws over the Buccaneers, which I'm sure the Saints will want to do as well. So you have that going on. Kyle, number 10, the Chicago Bears. Where are they going?
Weird spot for the Bears here, I think, because, I think that they probably would have gone for a guy. I think they wanted one of these offensive guys. Obviously, they want Gene T. It's not really a secret at this point. So missing out on that means they probably have to go in a different direction. There's a few different spots I feel like I could look at as far as the defense goes. They could go for someone like Walter Nolan, but I kind of like Ravon Dexter and Grady Jarrett unless they want him to learn behind Jarrett for a year. I could go with James Pierce, who was just, passed in our last pick. I think that's something that could work too, to pair him with Montez Sweat. But I'm going to go secondary, actually. And I know they got Brisker and they got Kevin Byard, but I'm also going to add Malachi Starks to this group. And I want the number 1 safety on the board. I think he's a very, very good athlete. I think he's a very, very good safety. And I think he can come in right away and help this team out.
Wow, I think it's a bit of a surprise here, Kyle. I think he's a bit. Again, it's what we would do. So we're gonna. That's how this whole show is designed to work. It's a bit early. 21st on the consensus big board. Also, I don't know if people are looking at this as a massive need given who they currently have on their roster. So I'm a bit surprised.
I mean, they have some options here, but like I don't know. I don't think defensive line I think they could have added another edge rusher, and it's the same thing. Like, is this still a bit of a reach for a guy like Pierce or Mike Green? I still think it's a bit of a reach for that compared to someone like Starks. And I think that it's okay to load up on a strength here and get the best player available. I really like him adding to this safety room because look, Kevin Byard's not getting any younger, and he's had some up and down years as he's aged. Like, I think that this is a spot he could come in and help out.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it just comes down to is how much do you value the player, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think it's totally fine, even if it's not like a pressing need. You don't have to always just draft for what your biggest need is. You can just draft the player you like. I think for me, I think there's just players I like better still on the board.
That's fair. Yeah, if you like other players more, then that's
Mhm.
fine. I think Starks is going to be a very good player, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. Number 11 on the board here. Again, I think I should say I think Starks would be a very good player for them. I think it would fit into everything. Number 11, we can move along. The San Francisco 49ers. I think the two things I'm looking at here are, first, do I want to go with James Pierce? Just again, a player that we both really like. But is this the perfect fit? I mean, I think they could definitely use someone like him. I think the other thing is, again, with just how much people like Will Campbell, is it worth it just to say, you know what? Okay, is this the time to make a move like that? Because they could use an offensive lineman. It's again. I think it's just probably the move I'm going to make. I'm just going to go Will Campbell here.
Yeah, and I think it's fair. Look, I know
Mhm.
they have Trent Williams, obviously, but you can go in a lot of different directions with this one because him and Dominic Pooney, who they got last season, are both very good players. But you can add Will Campbell to that offensive line, maybe play him left guard until obviously you move on from Trent Williams as he gets older. So yeah, I think it's a completely justifiable one, and I think it could be very good. I agree.
Kyle, number 12, Dallas Cowboys. Where are you going?
All right. So the Cowboys, I think, have a few holes on their roster they have to figure out. I'm sure they were like crossing their fingers and all that, hoping that at that point Will Campbell may go to them because I think that they could use another offensive lineman as well. And he probably would have plugged in right away at left tackle. So yeah, I think that they have a few options as well still that they can attack. Uh, you know, do I go for my next receiver on the board, which would be Luther Burden, and say I want to add Luther Burden to this offense to complement CD Lamb? But I'm actually going to go for the edge rusher spot, and I'm going to pair Micah Parsons with James Pierce at this point. I want some help on that defensive line. I'm not entirely convinced Dante Fowler is my guy, and so let's go Pierce to pair with Parsons and load up on the defensive line a little bit.
Yeah, there will be some people who disagree just because, again, we are essentially the James Pierce Jr. fan club. You and I both think that this is totally worth a pick. And anything, I think this feels like he kind of fell, just given how the board fell for us. Obviously, I would love this pick. A guy who can also be out there all three downs, I think really helps complement Parsons, right? Who Parsons improved a lot in the run defense game, but we all know you want him as a pass rusher. Having someone who can kind of do it all just helps complete that defensive line a little bit more. Yeah, I like this move.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice spot for them. I still think that they have some holes on offense they need to address, but I think this is a very good running back and receiver class that they can kind of wait on, or good running back class at least. And I think there's a few receivers they could still look at and try and get some depth there. So, I don't think they need to attack that right away.
Yeah. Pick 13, the Dolphins. I'm taking Jody Barron. They desperately need corners now. There's it just feels like a I think he's the next highest player on my board. He fills probably their biggest need. Feels like an easy pick for me.
Yeah, this feels like a slam dunk. I like this pick as well. They need some help in that secondary. They lost a few players this offseason, so absolutely no debate for me as well. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Number 14, the Indianapolis Colts. Where are you going?
They kind of stumble into this one for me, and I really like the pick for them. I'm going to go with Tyler Warren, who is my number one pass catcher in this draft. Obviously, tight end is a little bit different than wide receivers, so that's why he fell below McMillan and a few guys there. But I think he fits what the Colts need. I think they definitely need a dynamic pass catcher, and I think he fits really nicely into this offense and should help right away. So give me Tyler Warren in this spot and get the Colts another playmaker.
Yeah, someone who I am a little lower on Tyler Warren. He's still second highest on my board currently right now. So even as someone who's lower on him, this feels like really good value at 14. It's just a tight end thing. Like there's a lot of teams that don't need tight ends, so like
Mhm.
that's sometimes a lot of times tight ends, like centers, and the positions where you only really need one guy, sometimes they fall, even if they're good players. So yeah, I think that this would be a really good pick for them. It seems like it's a very good chance this is what happens as well. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think he's really dynamic, and I'm a big fan of his. He'd be a top 10 easily, of my, overall board. And getting him in this spot, I think for a team that needs a tight end desperately too, I think is a huge addition. So yeah, I think this would be one of my favorite picks of the draft so far.
Yeah. It would be a pick I would definitely agree with as well. Let's go on to the Atlanta Falcons, who are at number 15 on this at this point. And again, it's a bit of a weird spot for me. I'm trying to figure out exactly where I would go, because one thought I had is Mike Green, who it's a bit of a reach on my board, but also I think they could really use an edge rusher. They've really struggled at that. I think that the secondary has some maybe younger, promising players that can work. So I think I'm just gonna go with Mike Green, and we'll see how it works
Mhm.
out.
I definitely, I mean, this was a huge problem for them last year, right? They tried to make the
Mhm.
Matthew Judon trade and fix it. It didn't quite work out. And yeah, I mean, this is a desperate need, I think, for this team. They do have to replace their center, not really a great interior lineman draft. Plus, centers don't really get drafted this high. You could talk me into another receiver to pair next to Drake London, whether you wanted to go Luther Burden or Matthew Golden. I think that's really the only debate for me, though. Do you want one of those receivers? Do you want Mike Green? And I like Green just a hair more than both of those receivers.
And I don't know. I just feel like I know the receiver is listed as a need. I feel like they're okay there. I just feel like that's not. They have much bigger issues.
hmm Yeah, I mean, yeah, I they definitely need another guy, but like what they got out of Mooney last year and that kind of thing, I don't think it's like the top priority for me.
Yeah, I'd rather get a guy in the third round. Again, if the right player is available, if Ted McMillan is still available, go for it. But like I think at this point, I'd rather stick with.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Okay, Kyle, number 16, the Arizona Cardinals. Where are you going?
All right. Cardinals for me still need some defensive help. I think they desperately need some players in the secondary that has been very shaky the last few seasons. And yeah, so he's one of the next guys on my board, so I'm perfectly fine with it. Let's get Will Johnson in the building here. Guy who's played a lot of football in college. He's got a lot of experience. I think he's a very refined cornerback, and I think he's going to come help this team right away.
Yeah, absolutely. They need. I mean, again, the Cardinals had a weird thing where you look at their roster, and on paper, it looked horrible last year, and it ended up being like solid. But
Mhm.
definitely they could use another. At least defensively, it looked horrible and ended up being solid. Could definitely use. Really like Will Johnson. This is this again another pick that I could see happening, and I think it'd be smart.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that there is they probably would have liked one of those edge rushers to fall to them if possible. I mean, I think that they had a few other options that they still need to add on defense. I know they got Josh Sweat. Still feels like they could use another guy on that defensive line, but, they still need help in the secondary too. So I don't have any issues with this.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the Cincinnati Bengals, who are next on the list. And again, there's some interesting ways you could go about this. I do think like is it too early for Derek Harmon, a good pass rushing interior guy who I think can help out with this. Part of me is I'm even considering like, do you go Matthew Golden here? Just I know it would be insane for them to go with another wide receiver, but like, would be pretty fun. I think you're almost maxing out at a certain point with your passing attacks. I probably can't do that. I'm gonna go with I think I'm gonna go with a corner here, and I'm gonna go with my next corner on my board, Trey Amos, a player who, again, is it early for most people? Sure, but it's not early for me. I think he would fit that scheme. Yes, they have some young players, but you need depth at the corner position. To me, he could play outside corner for the Bengals, so I'm putting him there.
Yeah, I like him a lot too. This may be a little bit high for me just because, like, I still have him as the next corner on the board for me, but I had him a little bit lower, I think, on my overall board. But at the same time, I think this is a good pick for the Bengals, who still need help in this secondary. They still need to add some players to this defense for sure. And yeah, I think that's definitely a spot where they could address it, and I don't hate it at all.
Yeah, I only have two players ahead of. Again, I don't love this draft. I think that there's a lot
Yeah.
of great players in this spot. So I kind of agree that he's usually like a back end of the first guy. It's that much of a reach in this draft to get a back end of the first guy with pick 17.
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. So I think it's a perfectly justifiable pick at this point. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's going to be an interesting one that's discussed. I think going forward is like, what do the Bengals do here? Do they reach for a guy like this over the consensus? But at the same time, I still think he's a very good prospect.
Yeah, and I think this stuff is going to happen. I think we're going to get some reaches in this spot just because of the same logic I'm going with of like, I'm okay with reaching if you're not getting that much worse of a player, and I think that there's just a lot of players who are kind of bunched up here.
Yeah, there really is. I really do think there is too. So I don't hate it at all.
Okay, Kyle, number 18, the Seattle Seahawks. Where are you going?
All right. So there's a few different spots we could go here. This team desperately needs some offensive line help. But this isn't an awesome spot for me for offensive line. I think they would kind of have to move up to get one of those guys. If anything, they could go back possibly, or just reach for a guy. As you said, this could happen a lot. There is a lot of Gray Zabel talk as far as a first round prospect goes.
Mm-hmm.
And even in this range, I think that's someone I would consider, honestly, just because I think they desperately need the help there. But I'm going to take a chance here. I think this team can afford to take a little bit of a chance on this defense and try and add a high upside player who we've talked about a few times. Is he a perfect prospect? No, but this athleticism says a lot. And I think he's at least better on tape than some of the other high athlete, imperfect players. So I'm going to take Jalen Walker in this spot.
Okay, yeah, he's again a player I'm not crazy about. Just because I don't know what to do with him. I agree. There are impressive things on tape. Like there is like he is. It reminds me of the Trayvon Walker thing of just like, okay, this is an impressive thing, and I just don't know what to do with this. So I'm gonna let someone else figure it out. Like that's just how I would view it. So that's why I wasn't probably gonna draft him in the first round. But ultimately, like, yeah, I think it absolutely like why not do something like this if you're Seattle and have a chance to get a stud player if it works out.
Yeah. The best version of this is you got a Pro Bowler, right? And then there's obviously a lot of scenarios I think this could also not work out for them, but he's got insane potential. And a guy like Mike McDonald, I would be really excited to add him too. He's done a lot of stuff in Baltimore with some creative and unique players. Obviously, Kyle Hamilton in his stint there was a big one. And I think he could. I think he's someone that could, be thrusted into that Seahawks room with Mike McDonald, and he would find some creative ways to use him.
Yeah, and for again a draft like this where there's not really a ton of like blue chip prospects like left, right? It's mostly a lot of guys. I'm like, yeah, I could maybe see you being like, like a starter. Maybe there's more potential than that, but like that's what I'm kind of see you as. Like, I'm more willing to take a flyer here, so I don't hate it.
Yeah. Let me take the chance at this spot, and then we'll figure it out from there for sure. I think that's kind of where I'm at with the Seahawks in this one. Like I said, I just think it's a bit of a reach for what they really need, which is offensive line help.
Yeah. Next up is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, my team, and there's several ways I could go with this. I mean, for one thing, you have to look at the Derek Harmon or Kenneth Grant, duo. Do you go with one of those guys and just try and again add another body in that defensive line? That's something you could certainly consider. Even Colston Loveland, although I don't love how he would pair with Cade Otton, feels like they kind of check similar boxes there, but that's something you can consider. Do you want to go if we want to go for safety here? To me, I think I'm kind of reaching on a safety. If I do that, Kyle, I think I'm just going to pick the guy who I think is the best player. I think I'm just going to pick Matthew Golden. I mean, do the Buccaneers need a wide receiver? No, they have Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. They have other guys that you feel can step up. But I don't know. I just think he's the best player, and I want to just get the best player. And eventually, in theory, Mike Evans or Chris Godwin will get older and play worse, and then you have a backup plan. And hey, you have a lot of receivers play, right? Like it's not just one guy out there. Jalen McMillan. Okay, now he's the fourth receiver. He's still going to get significant playing time. Injuries are going to happen. It's not a position I'm gunning for as a Tampa Bay fan, but if he's available and this is the way the board's shaken down, okay, let's just take him.
Yeah, Like, I don't hate the pick at all. Obviously, like you said, it's not a need for them right now. But at the same time, it eventually could be a need. You have two good receivers that are over 30, right? So it's
Mhm.
something that is it would have to be addressed at some point. The tough thing, the tough thing for you in this spot is the way our drafts has played out has not broken well for Tampa Bay at all.
Mhm.
We had four corners come off the board. We had what is it, three edge rushers come off the board, and two in the last like six picks. And then also Jalen Walker, who could be an edge guy as well. So it just didn't break the way Tampa Bay needed it to, right? Like this is probably not the best case scenario for Tampa Bay, but they could still add a very good play with getting a guy like Golden. So they definitely need different spots in their team. But like I said, and Campbell got taken earlier as well. So if this all goes this way, then Tampa's kind of left in a bind at this point where maybe this is a trade back spot for them as well, because just, I don't hate the Golden pick though in a vacuum because I think he's a good player.
Yeah, I could definitely see a trade back with. Does a team want to jump like the Steelers to try and make sure they get a quarterback? I could see it happening, and I would definitely say yes. Although I think Jason Light just like came out and said like teams don't want to trade down, which shows where his mindset is at. If he's saying that publicly that teams don't want to trade down, that he's at least thought about it. But yeah, it will be interesting if this happened. Kyle, number 20, the Denver Broncos. Where are you going?
All right. I am probably racing this pick up to the I'm racing to the phone to make this pick. It's happening right away. I'm a little bit surprised he didn't go earlier in a few spots, but this is the way our draft board shook out. So let me get Walter Nolan here with the 20th pick. He's a player that I really like on the interior. He's my next highest defensive prospect for sure. And Broncos already got a very good defense. I think they can even give him some time to kind of ease into the position, but he's also still kind of a need. So I like Nolan in this spot, and I think that this Broncos defense could get even better going into next season.
Yeah, I like him as well. I think he's someone who can help out with the defense. It doesn't need help, but again, he's a body you can throw in there on the interior. I'm not quite as high on him as I guess PFF is because he was like one of their highest graded players. He's 25th on the consensus big board, but yeah, I mean, I think he's good, and I think he could help out this defense.
Yeah, definitely. So, this would be a very interesting pick. I think that they would be thrilled to have this shake out the way that it did. So I think he could go in and, play all along their three-man defensive front and be impactful. So I really like him in this position.
Okay, Kyle, it's 21, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is not what I think is going to happen. Yes, it appears as though Aaron Rodgers is going to be with the Steelers. That's what we're assuming happens. But you know what? It's what I would do. And I would not be signing a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers at this situation. I would be, I think, saying, hey, I know the Kenny Pickett thing didn't work out, but you know what? Let's go into the season with another quarterback. I'm going to take a quarterback that PFF apparently hates. Jackson Dart will be my pick here at 21.
Jackson Dart, the next pick. I don't hate it. I have Shedeur Sanders higher, but I think these two are pretty close. I have them both as probably second round grades. But if it's a quarterback, I don't hate reaching for a quarterback at all. So, I know it's second round grade, but you're taking the chance here. I think Jackson Dart has some really good things to his game. I think he's terrific at a play action. I think that is something that Arthur Blank, their offensive coordinator, I think he's still the offensive coordinator, loves to do. And so, yeah, I think going into this, I think this would be a good situation for Dart, where even, yes, I would still be very hesitant to sign a guy like Rodgers. I think learning behind Rodgers for a year could be beneficial as well anyways. So I like Dart in this spot for sure.
Wait, Arthur Smith.
Arthur Smith, yes.
Yeah, Arthur Blank is the.
Wow.
I had to check that. I'm like, wait a second. That doesn't sound right. Yeah.
You know who I meant.
I know. Yeah, a Falcons guy named Arthur. Basically there. Yeah. Again, there are two teams. There are three teams in the league. There are teams that definitely have their quarterback situation figured out. There are teams that maybe have their quarterback situation figured out, and there are teams that definitely don't have their quarterback situation figured out. This at least puts you in the middle tier.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't hate it at all. And you're taking a chance here, and maybe he outplays Aaron Rodgers in the offseason or something like that. So I definitely don't hate it at all. And you take a chance on a quarterback who has some talent.
Yeah, rather him than a guy who might just end up being we're talking about rotational players or maybe starters type value at this point. Kyle, 22, the Chargers, where are you going?
I'm taking Luther Burden here. Next player on my board, he's a receiver I really like. I even have him over Matthew Golden on my receiver rankings, but I think those two are actually pretty close. And this team needs some skill talent, so let's add some skill talent. And I think that the way they may be able to use him and Lad McConkey could be really fun. So let's put Burden and McConkey together in the same offense and run it. Although I know for a fact that with two Michigan guys on the board, I feel like Jim Harbaugh would definitely take Colston Loveland over him. But I'm taking Luther Burden because I'm running the Chargers in this draft.
Yeah, feels like Colston Loveland to the Chargers. Feels like that's where things are leaning. But yeah, I would love this pick. Even as someone who's a little bit lower on Burden than you are, I still have him as kind of a fringe first rounder. There's so much good stuff with his game that and I think he would fit this system well. So yeah, I'd be all for it.
Yeah, blue chip athlete. He makes some fantastic catches, and I just think he's a very good player. So I wouldn't hate it at all. And like I said, I don't even hate Loveland. Like I wouldn't mind Loveland in this spot. He's pretty close on my board as well. I just like Burden a lot more. I would have Burden in the top 20 for me, and getting him at 22 feels like a good pick.
Yeah, makes sense. 23. So now we have the Green Bay Packers, which is a team I have not been able to figure out what they should do this entire thing. Kyle, doesn't this make sense in real life for them to trade with the Chiefs at 31? Chiefs come up and get a tackle. Like that feels, you're jumping like the Texans and some other teams that might want to go there.
I think so. Yeah, 100%. So I wouldn't hate that at all. But yeah, I mean, I think that this could be a trade back team, but I also think there's a few good players on the board that could help him out still.
Yeah, kind of one thought I'm going with, and again, people are going to call this a reach and whatever. It's my opinion. I think I'm just going to go Jaden Higgins, who, what do the Packers need? They need someone who can win on the outside. Like that's their whole issue with their offense. They're so good at over the middle stuff, but Higgins can hopefully be the guy who can, I think, finish off this offense. So again, I'm higher on Higgins than a lot of other people are, but I think this would really fit this team really well.
I don't hate it. Yeah, he would be among my next receivers considered. I have Ibuka over him, but at the same time, if you want an outside receiver, I can understand talking yourself into Higgins over him for sure, especially with the inconsistent play of Christian Watson and the inconsistent health. So I definitely don't hate that at all, and I think that'd still be a pretty good pick.
Yeah, and again, the Packers are weird. No pick makes sense for them here.
Yeah, they do things a little bit differently. They're probably going to go offensive line, right?
Yeah, probably. I think that's the move. Yeah, the idea of them drafting a receiver in the first round can only be done in a mock draft, probably. But number 24, where are you going with the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, so the Vikings are an interesting spot because this is a very good team. They still have a few holes it feels like they need to plug and play here. So I don't necessarily get the running back need, and I wouldn't go. I would think about Amari and Hampton, but I don't really need it. The two spots I'm looking at here is interior defensive line, where Harrison Phillips is older. You have Javon Hargrave, which, we'll see how that works out, I guess. So could you go a Kenneth Grant in this spot? But I am going to actually go with Gray Zabel. I'm going with Gray Zabel because I think you saw the issues with this offensive line towards the end of the season where, Sam Darnold got hit a lot in those last two games. Some of it was Sam Darnold's fault. But, they have Christian Darrisaw. They have Brian O'Neill. Those guys are very good when they're healthy. But I still think you need some guys on the interior spot. And I like Zabel a lot. I think he could play left guard for Blake Brandel. And if Darrisaw gets hurt, I think he could bump to the outside as well. So give me the versatile player on this offensive line to really help him out. And I like that pick.
I wouldn't hate it at all. You know who would hate it? The Houston Texans, if this ends up going right before, because Houston obviously would be desperately wanting someone like this. Yeah, it's interesting. It's not something I see mocked too often, but I wouldn't hate it at all. And again, this is maybe why if you're the Chiefs, you want to trade with the Packers, and I'm sure the Packers would want to trade down.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a case for it for either guy. So obviously there is a I think Grant would even be a great pick here. But yeah, I think Minnesota is one of those teams where, I think they can get a little risky with their pick anyway, because there's just so much talent in this team. It's not like, I have a few things. There's a few spots I think they could definitely plug in and find some improvement, but at the same time, there are a lot of guys that I think are really good on this team, and it's not like there's a ton of needs right now.
Yeah, it's you're right. They're in a pretty good spot. They've done a good job at drafting. They're also a team that could be a trade down candidate, as they tend to like to do that. Moving on, so now we have the Houston Texans, who again very disappointed as to how this is all broken down after they were very much hoping to improve their offensive line. I'm sure you could go Josh Simmons, you could go Josh Connerly. I think that's what they would probably do. I just kind of feel like that's a reach here, right? Like, I just don't know if I love that player in this spot. So I don't know. I think I'm just going to go with, like, is it crazy to go with Kenneth Grant here? Someone who, again, their run defense was pretty good last year, but they could find snaps for him. Again, build on a strength and then just hope you can fix the offensive line later on. I think that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think it's kind of adding best player available in the draft, and I think that's very okay. I like Igbuka in this spot too. Help some offensive talent, but at the same time, yeah, I don't think this is a reach at all, and I think he'd be a very good player there.
Yeah, someone brings up Booker, which again, I don't think he's as good of a player. Like, I think you're getting in my opinion, based on my evaluation, I think you're getting a worse player if you do that, which is why I hate going into the draft needing to get a position. I think the Texans might have to sort of finagle the draft, and maybe they're a team that trades up to try and get the offensive lineman they want.
Yeah. I mean, they're in a really tough spot because they made that trade, right? The Laramie Tunsil one. They desperately need some offensive line help, it feels like, this season.
Yeah. 26. The Los Angeles Rams, a team that all of a sudden turns out they're pretty good at this drafting in the first round thing. Jared Verse last year was a superstar. Kyle, where would you go with the Rams this year?
Yeah, there's a few different options here. I actually have Josh Simmons above Zabel in my rankings. However, obviously the torn ACL scares me. And then the second thing, I think Zabel's a little more versatile, being able to play a little bit more guard, where I think Simmons did play guard in the past, but I think he's more of a tackle at this point. But I'm going to take the chance here on Simmons and say, let's plug him in here and add some offensive line help. I think he could play tackle. He played right tackle at San Diego State. He played left tackle at Ohio State before tearing his ACL. And there's a ton of traits with this guy that you'd really like. So I don't hate it at all. And I'm okay taking the chance here.
Yeah, I completely understand it. Again, he's not a player that I'm just as crazy about. That's the only reason why I didn't, didn't make that move with the Texans. But if you like him, like, sure, why not? I mean, they have position of need, and he has the traits at least to be a good pass blocking tackle, which is important when you have Matthew Stafford at quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm perfectly okay with that, and let's take the chance and see if we can make something happen there. But yeah, I think the potential for him is still high, and he could definitely help this Rams offense right away if he's healthy.
Yeah, right. Didn't consider Shedeur Sanders here at all?
No, not at this time. I'm not looking at that right now. I just wouldn't worry about it at this time.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Moving on to pick 27, this is another team that I kind of struggle with a bit, because I'm kind of looking at it like the top players on my board. So I have Kyle Williams, but I wouldn't draft him in the first round because he's not going to go in the first round. I have Derek Carman. There's who is, again, I don't think they don't need an interior guy. I have Maxwell Harrison. I don't know if they need a corner. I have Colston Loveland. They definitely don't need a tight end. So it's just kind of a weird spot for the Ravens. I feel like the way this has all broken out. So I'm trying to think, do I want to go with like Emeka Egbuka here, who they don't, again, is that a need for them? I don't think so, but could they build off of a strength? Perhaps. I think that might be what I do here. Kyle, what do you think?
My next pick would be very upset with that, but I don't hate it. You could go Donovan Ezeraku, potentially, if he's your next defensive lineman on the draft. This team loves to bring in some edge rush talent, so I wouldn't hate that as well. that is a really tough spot because this is another team that feels like they could use an interior offensive lineman. I think Connerly's a guy who could bump inside as well, so that is an option as well. It's just nothing feels perfect to me.
Yeah, which maybe means I should just find a player that I like, because again, like the interior offensive line is probably what I would do, but you have Travis Jones, who's 25 and plays 700 snaps a year, and then you have Matabuke, who plays 900 snaps a year. So like they're one of the few teams like legitimately wouldn't have space for an interior defensive lineman, so you can't really do that. I think I'm just going to draft Egbuka, who I think will be good and will fit the scheme, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't hate the pick at all. I think he's a good player, and let's put it this way: like, are you still 100% convinced of Rashad Bateman after one season? I'm not 100% convinced in him. So maybe this is a spot where you just take a chance and say, let's just give ourselves some insurance here just in case.
Yeah. And again, he'll get playing time, right? I mean, like you had like Tylan Wallace had 400 snaps last year, right? Like now you have Egbuka taking those snaps, and there's other snaps to be had. So yeah, I think it like DeAndre Hopkins should not be scaring you off of drafting a receiver if you want a receiver.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we saw DeAndre Hopkins in some big games last year, no show. So, at this point, DeAndre Hopkins was a great player. I'm not banking on that adding a whole lot for me at this point.
Yeah. If there was a better fit, I would go with that. But I don't hate this pick. Kyle, 28. The Lions do hate that pick. Now they have to scramble. Where are you thinking here?
Yeah, tough spot for them. They really wanted Ibuka to fall to them. He did not. So they're looking elsewhere. And let me take a look at my board here. Where am I at? So I could go with, I have two guys here that I really like still that are, high-ish enough on my board that I'm okay with it. And they're towards the top of this draft. Maybe take a reach on a guy like Loveland and just say, let's add talent. But you already have a great tight end in Sam Laporta, so you don't need it. But you do need an edge rusher. We saw what happened when Aiden Hutchinson got hurt last year. I know they added somebody in the trade as well. But let's get Donovan Ezraku. I think that's how you say his name. Let's just add another edge rusher. Let's get another body in there and see what he can do. And I think he's a good player.
Yeah. I don't hate this. Again, I'm a little bit lower on him than other people, but not massively so. I think that he's someone who would help. And yeah, I mean, the Lions are kind of one of those teams where, as much as I say I hate drafting for need, it's like when you get to these teams, you can maybe make the argument, right, of let's just try to get a player who can help us win now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, he's got experience. He's a smart player, and I think he's someone that can come in and try and compete for a spot and compete for some snaps, even if he's still got a little bit of developmental to go.
Yeah. Number 29, the Washington football team, also known as the Washington Commanders, who, again, are a bit weird. I do think they would like to go edge rusher here, but I just feel like if I'm drafting an edge rusher, I'm probably reaching at this point. I think they actually, this is kind of crazy, sounds crazy, but I think they actually feel fine about their cornerback situation. I think they're banking on Lattimore to improve, and then you just have like Mike Sanderstill, Jonathan Jones, Noah Igbenogany. Like I don't know if Sanderstill's good, but I don't know if I'd feel great about this room. And what if Lattimore doesn't get better? Listen, if everyone steps up and they don't need a corner, fine. But there's a corner I still like. I like Maxwell Harrison a lot, and he's available. And let's just do this. And if Lattimore goes back to being great, then we'll find room for him. The secondary is about depth. Being too deep at corner is a great situation to have. Look at Philadelphia last year, which is kind of what happened with them. That's the pick I would make.
Yeah. I'm a little bit lower on Hairston, but I understand the appeal. I think he's got, a great physicality to him, and he forces a lot of incompletions. But, I do think he has a little bit of the penalty thing to him, and I think that's something that's going to have to be adjusted at the next level. But maybe you could coach it out of him and, help him get better in those spots. So I definitely don't hate it.
Yeah. 30, the Buffalo Bills. Where are you on?
All right. So I'm going a little deep on my board here.
Okay.
He is someone I have, or deep on the consensus board. I think I have him much, much higher than the consensus for sure, but he's a player I really like, and I think he has a chance to be pretty special. I'm going Darian Porter, the corner from Iowa State. Very unique player, older prospect. He is 24, so that's a bit of a red flag, especially when he didn't start until 2024. But former wide receiver, former special teamer, track athlete. He's got incredible speed, incredible explosiveness, plus 95th percentile measurables with height and arm length. I think he's a really interesting talent who could be very good. He's got the ball skills of a receiver. He's got the speed. He's got the length. I could think he could be a sleeper in this draft, and he's someone I have firmly at the top of the second round. So I'm reaching a little bit, but I want to add some defensive talent here, and I'm just lower on guys like Scourton and Stewart than others, and I don't want to take him in that spot. So I'm going to go and get the corner that I think could have a high upside play.
Yeah, well, he's such an interesting player. He reminds me almost like Jordan Mailata when that was selected, right? Where it's like, this is the guy who, he has, what, like 400 snaps at corner in his career, but like, he's also, trying to remember his, I'll look up his measurable. Yeah, he's what, like 6'4" and runs a 4.3. Like, that's like ridiculous. So it's like, if you can get him, sort of figure out the position, there could be an elite level player here. Just the question is like, is that going to happen? So yeah, I think for Bills fans, I think they would rather have a corner who they can like trust. Like, I think they'd rather have a Trey Amos who's just like someone should be good right away. But this is definitely, if it hits, something that could really work out.
Yeah. And obviously we were a little bit higher on Amos, so he goes higher in this draft. And it's another one where I don't love like the fit for a lot of these players. They don't need a guy like Loveland. I don't think don't need a guy like Hampton, who are the next two guys on my board. Maybe they could go Josh Carnley and try and build some depth on this offensive line, or go into, it's just, I think they need a defensive player, and there's just not a lot of defensive players I love in this spot. So it was between Porter and Benjamin Morrison for me next.
Yeah. It makes sense. Number 31, the team that beat the Bills in the conference championship, the Kansas City Chiefs, who, again, they're a team that would not love how this all broke down, right? They are definitely disappointed in this situation with the offensive lineman not really falling to them. I think I'm just gonna go with Derek Harmon. Really good pass rushing interior defensive lineman, a guy who, again, don't find playing time for. They did lose a defensive lineman, now an edge rusher, but still there's snaps you need to replace. So again, not the biggest position of need, but also having a good pass rusher next to Chris Jones could be very fun.
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. I think it's a nice pick. It could be very fun indeed. Did you think about Connerly in this spot, or do you not have him high enough?
He's just not high enough for me.
Yeah. And then obviously you're a little bit lower on Amari and Hampton, I think, than others. So that wasn't a consideration for you.
I mean, the Chiefs are not. I guess they did go CEH, but like no, like that doesn't make any sense. Like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, at least I think they thought he was going to be also like a Christian McCaffrey type who could pass catch. Like I think Hampton is a team that the right team to draft him would be like the Denver Broncos, a team that is like this. We're gonna build off the run. The Chiefs are smart. They're like, no, we're just going to sign Kareem Hunt off the street and we'll be fine.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. So yeah, I think it is a I definitely don't hate the pick because I was going to pick him next. So
okay,
yeah, it works out. I'm just picking your brain a little bit about the thought process here, how you feel about those other prospects. Those guys are fringe first rounders for me. But yeah, I don't hate it at all. There's two guys I still like for this next pick, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, interesting how this is all broken down. I mean, you see like Colson Loveland is still on the board, Amari Hampton, as you mentioned, still on the board, Nick Scorington, Shamar Stewart, who some people would have. The Philadelphia Eagles, who are known for being great at drafting. Kyle, what would you do? It's not what you think they will do. What would you do if you were them?
Yeah, interesting spot here for the Eagles because I still have a few guys I have first round grades on. Rattling off a few guys I have first round grades on. They obviously don't need Amari and Hampton. They have a guy named Saquon Barkley who's pretty good. They don't necessarily need Josh Carnley, although I wouldn't hate them adding another offensive lineman just for depth purposes. They have some older guys on that offensive line. He is a guy I still like towards the back half of the first round. So I take those guys off the board. My next guys, as far as first round grades go, are Xavier Watts, the safety out of Notre Dame. I don't necessarily need him. And then the other two that I still have first round grades on are Mikael Williams and Colson Loveland. This team has had a lot of success drafting Georgia players.
Hmm.
And Mikael Williams, fills a, I think, more obvious need for me for this team just because, like, they lost Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, which is why I was going to take Harmon in this spot if he fell to me. But yeah, I think Williams is a guy I really like in this draft as an edge guy. So I wouldn't hate that idea. However, I think this is still a team that, while they have some needs, is always about drafting the best players they can find available and figuring out from there. And the best player I have left on the board still, who, fell because of the positional need for a lot of these teams, is Colson Loveland, who I think should possibly go as high as 22 to the Chargers. I just like Burden a lot falling in that spot. So give me Loveland in this spot and say, we'll just figure it out from there, because I think he's the next best prospect.
I like it. It's something that the Eagles would definitely be, considering. Now, obviously, as we all know, they do not need a tight end. They have Dallas Goedert, but again, you can have multiple tight end sets. That's something you're allowed to do. Just looking at it, last year, Grant Calcarda, the backup tight end, had 880 snaps last year. So and again, part of that was because Goddard was banged up for a bit, and part of that was because they went to the Super Bowl, so they played, and they were 2 seeds, so they played 4 extra games. But still, you're going to get snaps out of Loveland. You can make it work.
Yeah, you're going to get snaps out of him for sure, and it gives you some insurance because Goddard has dealt with some injuries. You could go in a different, if you need to make a trade there to cut some costs, you could make that trade too. But yeah, I think there's a few different options there. And like I said, I think this team has historically done very well drafting the last few years because they just say, let's just get best players and figure it out. And I think he is the next best player, although I wouldn't hate Williams in this spot either.
Yeah. Kyle, that is our mock draft. I think it'll probably go a little bit different tomorrow night.
Yeah. I feel pretty confident about the first 2 picks.
I think so. Yeah, I think first 3, I feel like there's a chance that things could get weird at 3, but I feel pretty good about those.
If you were to bet on 3 of our picks being right after the first 3 picks, which 3 picks would you bet on?
Well, the first 2 I jump to are both 5 and 6. Mason Graham to the Jaguars and Genty to the Raiders. Although that's not guaranteed. Genty could go 5th. I'm trying to think, what's the next one that I would go? Maybe Ted McMillan to the Panthers, just because that feels like there's a good chance it happens. I'm not saying it guaranteed will, but I think those would probably be my 3.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Mike Green is an interesting one of the Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
I think if he falls that far, it's happening. I think that could be an interesting one. Tyler Warren's another one where if he falls to 14, I think it should be a slam dunk. The Colts take him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are the few interesting ones for sure. But beyond that, I think the Cardinals would also be thrilled if Will Johnson's there. So I think that's another slam dunk for me. But yeah, 5, 6, and then beyond that, we'll see.
Yeah. Michael says, how pumped are you for this year's draft versus previous years? I'm excited. I think I'm a little bit, I think I'm a little bit just worn out because I'm planning a wedding and also doing all the draft stuff. So I'm excited for it to be over for time purposes. I'm also a little bit just I feel like the first handful of picks are kind of going to go either one of 2 ways, which could be a bit of a bummer if that's how it goes. But I still think there's a lot of intrigue here. The draft's always fun.
Yeah, it is always fun. We talked about, I think the first 3 picks seem like they're pretty solid spots right now. However, I think the interesting thing with this draft, we're not going to have the Michael Penix whoa moment of this draft necessarily. But I think there's going to be a lot of variance as far as draft boards go. I think there's going to be teams who have Kelvin Banks in their top 10, and there's going to be teams who don't have Kelvin Banks in their top 20. I think there's going to be people who have Jihad Campbell in their top 15 and people who don't have him in the first round, stuff like that. Same thing with a guy like Jalen Walker and going up and down the board. I think there are guys, like I said, I was listening to, I think, Peter Schrager the other day saying that Gray Zabel could go in the top 20 of people's drafts. So, there's a lot of interesting elements to that where there's not a lot of blue chip 5-star prospects, it feels like, in the draft. I think there is a lot of opportunity for variance and interesting picks, even though there's not going to be a Michael Penix situation, I think.
Well, and even Shedeur Sanders, he legitimately there's a world where he goes top 3, and there's a world where he doesn't get drafted in the first round. Like I've never seen something like that happen before. I guess technically
Yeah.
Will Levis was supposed to go like top 5 and fell, but no one thought he was going to fall out of the first round the night before the draft. Like Sanders, that's legitimately like people are predicting that, and people are predicting him to go top 3.
Can I offer a take? I think
Sure.
if Sanders goes in the top 15, it's an owner meddling.
That's not impossible.
I think, I think there's a variance on boards because scouts are like different, different opinions on different players. I think a lot of scouts have the same opinion on Shedeur Sanders, it sounds like. I think the public perception of Shedeur Sanders is what's skewing this. And obviously, I think he is fun to watch. So I think that is the aspect that's skewing it.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. That would be if there is a Michael Penix moment, it's going to be involving Sanders, I think.
Yeah. At this point, I'm pretty surprised. I'd be pretty surprised if the Giants took him 3. If they traded out of it, I'd be less surprised. But I'd be pretty surprised if he goes 3rd overall.
Kyle, if a billionaire came to you who listens to this show and says, "I'm going to give you $1 million, but you have to give one pick from this mock draft that definitely will not happen in the real draft, has the least amount of chance of happening. You get the $1 million as long as that pick does not happen." Which one of these picks are you taking?
Probably Membu to the Patriots, honestly.
Yeah, I guess that'd probably be the one.
There's so much reporting on that at this point. Like, I think it is. I feel pretty good that Will Campbell is gonna go there, even though I like Membu more. I think you could talk me into, if I were to bet on anything else, like, let's see.
I think Starks to the Bears feels like an option.
Yeah.
Or maybe even Loveland to the Eagles.
Yeah, that's fair because he'd go higher for sure.
Right, because he either would go higher or the Eagles wouldn't take him. It's like that one could go either way.
Yeah, so I think there's a few different ones there that could be talked into it. But yeah, I think those are the ones I'd probably look at the most.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, that is our show. Let them know where they can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Grondin, and make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK.
Of course, if you like audio-only podcast, anywhere you get your podcast, search On the Sideline Podcast. It is available there. And Kyle, it's weird how like nothing has happened in hockey recently. That's just completely gone by. Nothing of note that we need to talk about.
Hockey is over. We don't have to talk about it at all. We're all good.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Again, thank you to everybody for watching or listening. Kyle, any final thoughts? You're ready to get out of here?
No, let's get out of here. End of the day, and everybody enjoy your week.
Oh, I guess I should mention, tomorrow I will be making videos for every first round pick. I also should have winners and losers and a round 2 mock draft after the first round. So be on the lookout on this channel. Plenty of content coming at you. But yeah, that is it. Again, thank you to everybody for watching or listening. We do appreciate it. Until next time, have a good one.
Peace.